Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Israeli. So today I want to make this video for all the pro-Hamas, pro-war internet trolls. So there will be some kind of documentation out there that shows that if there's going to start a new cycle of violence, it's going to be because of Hamas. So today Hamas sent a threat to Israel that it should let the $30 million from Qatar pass into their hands. Otherwise, they're going to start the escalations again. So let's go over the article and see what's going on. And before I do that, please, the few of you who are watching and still haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It's easy. You just press a button. It really helps the channel a lot. And I'll be very thankful to you. Okay, so let's go real quick into the article here. Hamas leader to Israel, transfer $30 million from Qatar or head to escalation. So just tell me, what is that? Isn't that blackmail? Isn't that ransom and ransoming, kidnapping a whole population in Gaza, a whole population in Israel, and threatening to start violence and blood and death for $30 million that they want to go into their hands? Yeah? Let's see. And so this is just so you see who is starting the threats first and over what? Over $30 million, yeah? Israel and the UN are particularly concerned about the resumption of Qatar cash payments out of fear that Hamas would divert them for military purpose. Not out of fear. It's not out of fear. It's out of knowledge. It's out of knowledge that Hamas will divert them for military purposes. They're not going to use it for anything else, yeah? So they're saying, give us money so we can rebuild our arms, so we can start this escalation again. It's because, Hamas uses social media and they read the news and they watch BBC and they get interviewed by Vice, and they have all these other journalists that are always on their side no matter what happens, and they feel empowered by it. So they don't feel any fear. They won't have to be. They know they won't be held accountable if they'll start another escalation. They know they won't be the ones held accountable. So they have nothing to lose. At the end of the day, they are the ones sitting in bunkers, fairly safe, where their population is under threat when they start the violence. It's not them. They are not under threat. Hamas plans to escalate tensions with Israel unless it allows Qatar to transfer $30 million to the Gaza Strip to help pay salaries, Khan News reported on Monday. Salaries to pay their soldiers, to pay their army, to buy more arms. Yeah, the terrorist group leader in Gaza, Sinwar, met on Sunday with UN Special Coordinator in the Middle East peace process, Tor Wenzel, and pressed him on the matter. What is your name, Tor Wenzel? If you are the Middle East peace process coordinator, yeah, what are you doing talking to Sinwar, to the leader of Hamas? They're not for peace. Like, no matter how you try to interpret their charter, and no matter how you try to interpret their actions, whether you're pro-Hamas or not, no matter how you interpret it, you can interpret it in any way you want, yeah? But even if you go to the most positive interpretations, they are not for peace. Hamas is not for peace. So if you are a peace coordinator, why are you even speaking with this guy? Shouldn't it be someone else to speak with Sinwar, like a war coordinator or something, a terror coordinator or something? I'm just asking. I don't know. If somebody has the answer, feel free to answer. A discouraged Sinwar briefed reporters on the failure of the talks with the UN envoy and accused Israel of blackmail. Accusing Israel of blackmail. Yeah, he's saying, give us money or we're going to start an escalation. We're going to start the violence again. But Israel is accused of blackmail. This is the people who already follow what is happening and understand that Hamas is a terror organization. I'm talking to the convinced. But the ones who support Hamas, you support war. Look at this newspeak. And those of you who read 1984, this is newspeak, using the opposite of the truth. Yeah? Calling for popular resistance while pledging to convene a meeting of all Palestinian factions to unite their efforts. Because now they haven't stopped trying to get power on West Bank and Jerusalem. they still want to have their influence on the West Bank and Jerusalem. So all the next cycles they are going to have, it's not going to be just Gaza. Well, hopefully it will be just Gaza. Hopefully it won't be at all, but hopefully it will be just Gaza. But Hamas is going to try to bring the West Bank and Jerusalem into it as well. That will be a big win for them. If they succeed, I don't know. Last time they failed. Last time the West Bank and Jerusalem did not really join their war, which was a very positive thing. Israel and the UN are particularly concerned about the resumption of Qatar cash money out of knowledge that Hamas will use the fund to rebuild its military capabilities, significantly weakened during the latest round of violence last month. Hamas is in trouble. Hamas doesn't have enough artillery to actually start another cycle the way they want it to be, to put real pressure like last time on Israel. And he doesn't have money to pay salaries to his terrorist members. And, when I say terrorist members, because they work for a terrorist organization, but I do understand that for many people in Gaza, probably for all the people in Gaza, they have two choices: either work for Hamas or be unemployed. And since they do have families and they do need to feed them, so I understand why many of them do work for Hamas. And I think that many of them that do work for Hamas are not terrorists. They just work for Hamas because they have no other choice. Besides that, knowing that if they don't act as if they support Hamas, their life can be in danger. So not everybody that works for Hamas is a terrorist, but you are working for a terrorist organization, just to make that clear. One suggested compromise includes using the money to directly fund UN projects in Gaza Strip. Hamas will never agree to that. The issue is supposed to be on the agenda of next week's meeting in Cairo between Israeli and Egyptian officials, according to Khan. They're going to try to navigate it through Egypt to the UN, to the people in Gaza. But Hamas will never allow it. But again, Egypt has a lot of influence on Hamas. It has a lot of influence on Gaza. And Egypt can do a lot more when it comes to Hamas than Israel, because Egypt is today Egypt is probably the leader of the Arab world. So they have a word, they have power. So since Egypt is part of it, it makes me a bit more optimistic. Earlier on Monday, Sinwar told reporters that Hamas talked with the United Nations had failed. He announced that he had rejected Israeli provocations, and said that the meetings of all Palestinian factions would be held later that day. Now, just so you know what the provocations are, Israel said that nothing is going to go into Hamas and things are not going to be like in Bibi time until we get our soldiers, our citizens, and our soldiers back. Hamas is holding the bodies of two soldiers, and they're holding two Israeli citizens. One is a Bedouin and one is Ethiopian, and they both crossed voluntarily into Gaza because of different personal psychological problems, and Hamas is not willing to give them back. These people are not even soldiers. They just went through the border because they were confused, we'll call it, okay? And Hamas is not willing to give them back. And of course, nobody's talking about those people that are sitting there, two young men that are sitting there, and Hamas is negotiating with them like a negotiating card. They're not even soldiers. And the two bodies of the soldiers that they have for many years now, they're not willing to give back as well. And this is the provocation. Israel is saying, you want us to do something, then first give us our bodies back, the soldiers' bodies back, and our citizens back. But that's provocation. Yeah? Okay, so where were we? This was a bad meeting, and it was totally not positive. The meeting with the UN delegation was thorough, and they listened to us. It's unbelievable that the UN is listening to a terrorist organization. What is going on here? But unfortunately, there are no indications of intentions to solve the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip. Yes, there is. There is a lot of intentions and a lot of goodwill to rebuild Gaza, and not just from Europeans, from Americans, from Israelis, from people all over the place to rebuild Gaza, but there is no intention to give money to Hamas. There's no intention to rebuild Hamas. Now, Gaza is not Hamas, Hamas is not Gaza. Rebuilding Gaza does not mean we need to rebuild Hamas. Yeah? And, if Bibi was still prime minister, then I can tell you exactly what would happen. He would break, he would give Hamas the money, and he would hope that he would have quiet for a few more a few more months or a few more years, so he can do his other stuff, so he can stay in power. But now we have a new prime minister, and this is now I want to go to two good news. After we saw this bad news, maybe another escalation starts because Hamas is blackmailing the world, blackmailing the citizens of Gaza and blackmailing the citizens of Israel. If we don't get paid, we're going to start a new cycle of violence. So those are bad news, and hopefully Hamas will not start another cycle of violence because Egypt is there and a new prime minister that he doesn't know exactly, they don't know how he's going to react. So maybe things are going to be on standstill for now, hopefully. But we have to see. But just so you know, you saw it here. If anything starts, Hamas started it first. And you can see it here, black over internet. But let's go to two good news. So the new government in Israel has just gone through its first test, no confidence motion, which it has defeated. Now, it was a silly no confidence motion, and there are going to be thousands of them in the days and months to come, because the opposition is going to do anything in its power, kosher and non-kosher, in order to make this new government fall and put Bibi back in the controlling chair. But this is a good sign, because the first no confidence motion in government was defeated. And that shows that this government is able, at least for the time being, to work together. And this frustrates the opposition, because they're not used to being in opposition, and you can see it so clearly. Bibi used to call the people on the left, or the people in opposition, bitter, because he called them melefufonim chamutzim, which is like a pickle, like a brine pickle, which is like bitter because they're in opposition, and they're jealous and envious and whatever. But now when they're in opposition, so you can see it so clearly. They're going mad that they're in opposition. They're going mad that their hands is not in power anymore. But the first no confidence motion was defeated, and this is a good sign. Now, it's a good sign because maybe the Palestinians will understand that they're dealing with a different government than Bibi, and also Hamas maybe will understand that they're dealing with a new government than Bibi, and things will start changing. And this is one sign that things are starting to change. Another good news: Palestinians to renegotiate COVID-19 vaccine deal with Israel. Palestinian authorities plan to renegotiate deal to receive over 1 million Pfizer vaccines from Israel after scrapping the original agreement out of fear. So we all know the story that there was a deal. 100,000 vaccines were already passed to the Palestinian authorities, and 1 million more were promised, and they decided to cancel it because the expiration date was close, and they feel like they're being humiliated. You're giving us your scrapes, but it's not. Those vaccines are still used in Israel for the people who need it, but Israel is pretty much vaccinated. So they're giving it to Palestinians so they can vaccinate their people months ahead of time. Months. Now, my only criticism about this deal was that Israel expects to get those vaccines back in September, October, when the Palestinian Authority was supposed to get their batch. But I don't think Israel needs those vaccines, and even if it will need it, it can buy it again. I think it should have told the Palestinian authorities, here, we have these extra vaccines that we don't need anymore because our people are vaccinated, so we want to give it to you guys so you can be vaccinated as well, because it's also good for us because you are our neighbors, And when you get your vaccinations in September, use them as well to finish your vaccinations and get everybody vaccinated. And if you have any left, we might take it from you. Something like that. That's my only criticism, that Israel said, we'll give you 1 million now and you give us 1 million back. But I guess it's also fair to do that so it doesn't look like Israel is giving the Palestinian authority gifts, so later on it will, be easier to negotiate with, or it would look like that to the anti-Israel supporters. At least this is one for one, tit for tat, as they say. But I still think that Israel doesn't really need as far as money or the vaccines itself in October to get the Palestinian vaccinations, but that's my only criticism. But here you see now the Palestinians are ready to renegotiate. They understood that they acted too fast, that they listened to the internet trolls too fast, and by doing that they are hurting their people. They are hurting their citizens, and it makes no sense to do that just to make a few internet trolls happy when most of those internet trolls are not even Palestinians. They're Europeans, Americans, different types, but most of them are not even Palestinians. So they decided to renegotiate the deal, and hopefully they'll be able to renegotiate it and get that deal back on the table and bring those vaccines to their people and vaccinate their population months ahead of time, which will be very good for them, which will be very good for Israel, and it will be very good for building bridges of trust with this new government that we have, especially now that we have to work in front of Hamas again, apparently. But again, as always, for those of you who watch the channel, I'm optimistic, and I believe the good things are going to come out of this. Hopefully the COVID-19 deal will go through. Hopefully Hamas will not start another cycle of violence. Hopefully Israel and the United Nations and the Quartet will find a way to bring money to rebuild Hamas without it going through Hamas, to bring money to Gaza without it going through Hamas, probably with the help of Egypt. And hopefully things they're going to be interesting, because in that area things are always interesting, which is, I don't know, good and bad. But hopefully they're going to be calm. That's what we're hoping for. And if things will be calm, I'll start talking to you guys about more positive things, about happier things, about more cultural things. We'll see how it goes. So again, I want to thank all of you who are watching these videos. As you can see, I'm going to keep making these videos as long as things keep happening in the outside world. And I thank you a lot, again, those of you who are watching, especially those of you who watch until the end. And again, those of you who aren't subscribed, if you watched this far and you like this content, whether you agree or disagree, we're trying to build a community here, so even if you disagree, feel free to write it in the comment, but please subscribe. It helps the channel a lot. Okay, so that's it for now. I'll see you on the next video, and have a great day. Bye.